You know, there are some mysteries that just get under your skin, and the lost tomb of Alexander the Great, that's got to be at the top of the list. We've been searching for the final resting place of arguably the most powerful conqueror in history for centuries, and so far, nothing. Or have we been looking in the wrong place all along?
I mean, really think about that for a second. How does something that monumental just disappear? This wasn't some forgotten grave. This was the tomb of a man worshipped as a living god, a landmark so famous that emperors and generals made pilgrimages to see it. So how could it possibly vanish from the face of the earth?
For 1,600 years, that trail has been ice cold. But what if I told you that a pretty compelling theory suggests we've all been searching in the wrong place? That the answer isn't buried under the sands of Egypt, but is actually hiding in plain sight, inside one of the most famous basilicas in the world.
Okay, so to even wrap our heads around how this is possible, we need to go back. We need to follow the incredible journey of Alexander's body after he died and really nail down the exact moment it just went dark.
So after Alexander dies in Babylon, his general Ptolemy basically pulls off a history-changing heist. He hijacks the funeral procession and diverts the body to Egypt. Eventually, it ends up in this incredible tomb in Alexandria, the city Alexander founded. And for centuries, it's the place to visit. We're talking Julius Caesar, Emperor Augustus, they all paid their respects. But look at this timeline. In 390 CE, we have a writer confirming, yup, it's right here. Then just 10 years later, around 400 CE, someone else comes to see it, and it's gone. Poof. The trail completely dies in that tiny little window.
So, what on earth happened in that decade? You know, it wasn't an earthquake, it wasn't a fire. The answer seems to be something way more intentional, tied to a massive religious and cultural revolution that was sweeping across the Roman Empire.
And here's the motive. Right around 390 CE, the Emperor Theodosius starts issuing these decrees to destroy all pagan temples and sites. And Alexander? Well, he wasn't just a king. He was worshipped as a god king, a central figure in a major pagan cult. His tomb was basically one of the most famous pagan sites in the entire world, which suddenly put a giant flashing target right on its back.
This really leaves us with two main possibilities. The first is pretty simple. The tomb was torn down by religious zealots, and it's just rubble now, lost forever. But the second idea, well, it's way more interesting. What if, in a desperate move to save it, the tomb wasn't destroyed at all, but disguised?
And this brings us right to the heart of the theory. What if the people in charge of the tomb saw the writing on the wall and pulled off one of the most brilliant plans in history? A plan that involved giving the world's most famous pagan a whole new, holy identity.
Just look at this. On one hand, you have Alexander the God King, public enemy number one for the new Christian regime. On the other hand, you have Saint Mark the Evangelist, the deeply revered founder of Christianity in Egypt. The theory is as simple as it is genius. To save Alexander's body, they just rebranded it. It became the body of Saint Mark. Overnight, a place marked for demolition became a holy shrine, protected by the very same people who would have otherwise destroyed it.
And here is the kicker. The timing is just wildly suspicious. The very first time in history we see any mention of a tomb for St. Mark in Alexandria is in the year 392 CE. That's just 2 years after the last confirmed sighting of Alexander's tomb, and right in the middle of this anti-pagan crackdown. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it's the first piece of a 1,600-year-old puzzle.
Okay, so let's run with this. If Alexander's body is now disguised as St. Mark's, how does it end up all the way in Venice, Italy? Well, the story picks up again about 400 years later, with what was basically a holy heist.
Now, this part of the story isn't a theory. This is well-documented history. In 828 CE, a couple of Venetian merchants who are in Alexandria hear that the church holding St. Mark's body is about to be torn down. So they hatch a plan, smuggle the remains out of the city. The legend says they hid them under a layer of pork to keep the Muslim guards away. And they bring this incredible relic back to Venice. A magnificent chapel is built to house the body, and that chapel eventually grows into the St. Mark's Basilica we know today.
For centuries, that's kind of where the story ended. The body of St. Mark is safe and sound in Venice. But modern archaeologist has found some clues right there, in the basilica itself. Clues that point not to a Christian saint, but all the way back to a Macedonian king.
This right here could be the smoking gun. Archaeologists found a piece of a stone slab just a few feet from where the body was first buried in Venice. And carved on it is a Macedonian sunburst. That's the symbol of Alexander's royal family.
The stone itself is from the Eastern Mediterranean, and it dates to the 3rd century BCE, which fits the timeline perfectly. It begs the question, why is a piece of an ancient Macedonian tombstone sitting inside of a Venetian cathedral?
And it gets even crazier. When researchers figured out the slab's original dimensions, they realized it's a perfect match for the lid of a very specific, very famous sarcophagus, one that ancient historians had long connected to Alexander's burial. The thinking is that when the merchants smuggled the body out, they also took this ornate lid as, proof of what they had.
So let's just recap. The timeline fits perfectly, the motive is crystal clear, and now we have compelling physical evidence. You have a body that vanishes right when it's in mortal danger, and a new, holy body that conveniently appears in its place. A body that then travels to Venice with what looks like a piece of Alexander's original tomb. The case feels incredibly strong, but it's still officially unsolved.
So why can't we just know for sure? Because the one thing we need for definitive proof, DNA testing, carbon dating, any kind of scientific analysis of the bones, is completely off limits. The church authorities, understandably, have not allowed an examination of what they believe are the sacred relics of St. Mark. And so the theory just remains a theory. And so the mystery lives on. All the clues point to what might be one of the most audacious acts of historical preservation ever. But until that tomb is opened, we're all just left to wonder, is the body of the ancient world's greatest conqueror really resting in Venice under the name of a saint? And will we ever actually know the truth?